I stood in my own living room, my heart pounding as my older sister Diana barged through the door without knocking. She wore her signature power suit, the navy blue one that cost more than most people's monthly salary, and her heels clicked against my hardwood floor like tiny hammers of judgment. In her perfectly manicured hand, she waved an eviction notice, her red lipstick curling into a sneer as she demanded $4,500 in back rent. She'd fired me from our family's marketing firm just 2 weeks ago, calling me incompetent in front of the entire office. Now she stood in what she believed was her house, ready to throw me onto the street. I looked at the paper, then at her face, flushed with self-righteous fury. A calm smile spread across my lips. "About this house, Diana," I said softly. "We need to talk." 2 weeks earlier, I'd walked into the offices of Bennett Marketing Group with my usual morning coffee, completely unaware that my life was about to shatter. The company sat on the 14th floor of a downtown building with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city. My father, Gerald Bennett, had built this business from absolutely nothing, starting in a garage 32 years ago, with nothing but a telephone and a dream. Had always treated my sister and me equally, or so I thought. We both grew up learning the business, attending client meetings, understanding the delicate balance between creativity and commerce. For 6 years, I'd worked here after finishing my business degree. I handled all client relations, the face of the company, to our biggest accounts. I brought in roughly 60% of our revenue through careful relationship building and genuine care for our clients' success. My sister Diana, 3 years older than me, had always been the numbers person. She understood spreadsheets and profit margins, operations and efficiency. When our father retired 8 months ago, handing the CEO position to Diana, I'd been genuinely happy for her. I thought we'd make a great team. That morning started normally. I greeted the receptionist, stopped by the break room to chat with a few colleagues, and headed to my office. The space was modest but mine, filled with awards from satisfied clients and photos from successful campaign launches. It just settled in when Diana's assistant appeared at my door, her face pale and uncomfortable. "Diana needs to see you in the conference room," she said quietly. "The board members are there too." My stomach dropped. Board meetings weren't scheduled for another week. I grabbed my tablet and headed down the hall, trying to ignore the way my coworkers suddenly found their computer screens fascinating as I passed. The conference room door was already open. Diana sat at the head of the long mahogany table, flanked by 2 board members, Gregory Walsh and Patricia Summers, both friends of our father from the early days. "Sit down, Harriet," Diana said, not looking up from the papers in front of her. I sat, my hands folded in my lap. Something was very wrong. Diana finally looked at me, and I barely recognized the coldness in her eyes. "We've lost the Patterson account," she announced. $200,000 in annual revenue, gone. Because of your negligence." The words hit me like a physical blow. Marcus Patterson had been our client for 12 years. His company manufactured sustainable building materials, and we'd helped him grow from a regional supplier to a national brand. I'd just spoken with Marcus 3 days ago. Everything had been fine. "Diana, that's not what happened." I started, but she cut me off with a raised hand. "Marcus Patterson's son was caught embezzling from the company. You should have seen the warning signs. You should have protected our clients' interests. Instead, you were too busy being friends with Marcus to notice his business was falling apart." My mouth fell open. The son was embezzling, yes, but that had nothing to do with our services. Marcus and I agreed to pause the contract while he dealt with the family crisis. It was the ethical thing to do. He'll be back once things settle. Ethical. Diana's laugh was sharp and bitter. "Ethics don't pay salaries, Harriet. Ethics don't keep this company profitable. Your sentimentality has cost us one of our biggest accounts, and I can't overlook it anymore." Patricia Summers shifted uncomfortably in her seat. Gregory Walsh stared at his hands. Neither of them met my eyes. "Diana, let me call Marcus right now. We can clear this up in 2 minutes." I pleaded. "Don't bother. I've already spoken to him. He made it clear he has no plans to resume services." Diana pulled out a manila folder. "Furthermore, your performance over the past 6 months has been consistently below standard. Client complaints, missed deadlines, unprofessional communication." She slid the folder across the table. I opened it with shaking hands. Inside were printed emails and complaint forms I'd never seen before. Some were clearly taken out of context. Others I didn't recognize at all. My vision blurred as I realized what was happening. "This is fabricated," I whispered. "Diana, these aren't real complaints. You know my client satisfaction scores are the highest in the company." "We're the highest?" she corrected. "Before you let your personal relationships cloud your professional judgment, effective immediately, you're terminated. You have 1 hour to clear out your desk. Security will escort you from the building." The room spun. 6 years of my life. Of late nights and early mornings. Of campaigns I'd poured my heart into. Of relationships I'd carefully nurtured. Gone. Just like that. "You can't do this," I said, but even as the words left my mouth, I knew she could. She was CEO. The board members wouldn't challenge her, not without proof of wrongdoing. "I already have," Diana said, standing. She smoothed her suit jacket. "Maybe you'll finally understand what real work looks like. Living on family connections only gets you so far." I walked out of that conference room in a daze. The entire office had gone silent. Everyone knew. Diana had made sure of it. I returned to my office where 2 security guards already waited. They weren't unkind, but they watched as I packed my personal items into a cardboard box. Photos of my father at company events. A coffee mug my team had given me for my birthday. A small plant that had somehow survived my sporadic watering schedule. My coworkers avoided eye contact as I walked past their cubicles for the last time. A few brave souls whispered apologies, but most stayed silent. I understood. They had families to feed, mortgages to pay. Standing up for me meant risking Diana's wrath, and no one wanted to be next. The elevator ride down 14 floors felt like descending into a nightmare. When I finally stepped onto the street, box clutched in my arms, reality crashed over me. I was 32 years old, unemployed, and I'd just been publicly humiliated by my own sister. My phone buzzed in my pocket. I awkwardly shifted the box to pull it out, expecting maybe a supportive text from one of the braver coworkers. Instead, I saw a message from an unknown number. "Harriet, this is Benjamin Hart, your father's attorney. I need you to come to my office immediately. It's about the house and your father's wishes. Please come as soon as you can. This is urgent." I stared at the message, confusion cutting through my shock. Benjamin Hart had been our father's lawyer for 20 years, handling everything from business contracts to estate planning. Why would he need to see me about the house? I'd been living in the family's old Victorian home for 4 years, paying what I thought was rent into a family trust. It was a beautiful place in a quiet neighborhood, 3 bedrooms with original hardwood floors and a garden my father had planted himself. I flagged down a taxi, gave the driver Benjamin's office address, and spent the 15-minute ride trying not to fall apart completely. Whatever this was about, it couldn't possibly make my day worse. I was wrong. Benjamin Hart's office occupied a restored brownstone in the historic district, all dark wood paneling and leather furniture that smelled of old books and expensive cigars. His secretary showed me into his private office immediately, which told me this was serious. Benjamin didn't look like most lawyers on television. He was in his mid-60s with kind eyes and a gentle manner that had always put me at ease during the complicated business dealings of my father's company. "Harriet," he said, standing to shake my hand. His grip was warm and steady. "Thank you for coming so quickly. Please, sit down." I sank into one of the leather chairs across from his desk, still clutching my box of office belongings like a life raft. Benjamin noticed, and his expression softened with sympathy. "I heard about what happened at the company," he said quietly. "I'm very sorry." "You heard already?" My voice cracked. "It's been less than 2 hours. Patricia Summers called me. She's concerned about some irregularities she's noticed since Diana took over as CEO." He folded his hands on his desk. "But that's not why I asked you here, though it's certainly related. Harriet, I need to tell you something your father did 3 months before he retired, something very few people know about." My heart started pounding again. "What kind of something?" Benjamin opened a drawer and pulled out a thick legal folder. "Your father came to see me privately in March of last year. Had just received a diagnosis of early-stage Alzheimer's disease from his neurologist. Gerald knew his mental clarity was on borrowed time, and he needed to make some decisions while he still could. The words hit me like ice water. Dad has Alzheimer's? Since March? That's over a year ago. Why didn't anyone tell me? He didn't want anyone to know yet. He was still functioning well, still sharp during the day. But he knew it would progress, and he wanted to protect what had built. More importantly, he wanted to protect you. Protect me from what? Benjamin opened the folder and pulled out a document. Your father had been watching both you and Diana very carefully during his final months at the company. He saw things that troubled him deeply. Diana's increasing jealousy of your client relationships, her resentment of your natural warmth with people. He overheard her talking to some of the board members about diminishing your role, maybe even pushing you out entirely. I felt sick. She was planning this for over a year. Gerald believed so, and he knew that once his Alzheimer's progressed, he wouldn't be able to protect you or his legacy, so he took some precautions. Benjamin slid a document across the desk. This is the deed to the house you've been living in, the Victorian on Maple Street. I picked it up, scanning the legal language. My name jumped out at me from the page. I don't understand. I thought the house was in a family trust. That's what Gerald told both you and Diana. But 3 days after his diagnosis, he transferred the house into your name alone. Full ownership, no strings attached. The house is worth approximately $650,000, fully paid off. It's yours, Harriet. It's been yours for over a year. The room started spinning. But I've been paying rent, $1,500 a month to what I thought was the family trust account. Benjamin's expression darkened. Can I see your bank statements showing those payments? I pulled out my phone with shaking hands and opened my banking app, showing him the regular monthly transfers. He studied the account number, then checked something on his computer. His jaw tightened. That's not a trust account, Harriet. That's Diana's personal checking account. She's been collecting rent on a house she doesn't own, money you didn't actually owe, for 4 years. That's, he calculated quickly, approximately $96,000 she's stolen from you. The betrayal cut so deep I couldn't breathe. My sister hadn't just fired me. She'd been stealing from me for years. There's more, Benjamin said gently. He pulled out another document, this one sealed with red wax. Your father left you something else. 49% of his shares in Bennett Marketing Group. They're held in a separate trust that I control as executor. 49%? But Diana said she inherited 51% when he retired. She did, but your father structured it very carefully. Your shares are held in what's called a protective trust. Diana doesn't know about them. The trust has specific trigger clauses. If Diana attempts to sell the company, or if she tries to erase your contributions from company records, or if she engages in any provably fraudulent activity, your shares automatically transfer to you and you gain the right to call for a vote of no confidence. I stared at the sealed document. Why wouldn't Dad just give us equal shares? Why all this secrecy? Benjamin's voice was heavy with sadness. Because he hoped he was wrong about Diana. He hoped that given responsibility and trust, she would rise to the occasion and become the leader he'd trained her to be. He didn't want to publicly show distrust in his own daughter, but he also wanted to protect you in the company if his worst fears came true. He paused. Gerald left you a letter. Would you like to read it? With trembling hands, I broke the seal and unfolded the paper. My father's familiar handwriting filled the page, slightly shakier than I remembered but still distinctly his. My dearest Harriet, it began. If you're reading this, then Benjamin has told you about my diagnosis and the provisions I've made. I'm writing this on a good day, when my mind is clear and my heart is heavy with the knowledge of what's coming. I need you to understand why I've done things this way. I've watched Diana struggle with jealousy her whole life. Your mother and I tried to address it, but we failed her in ways I'm only now beginning to understand. Your mother, God rest her soul, had impossibly high standards. She pushed Diana relentlessly, always pointing out what she could do better, never satisfied with her accomplishments. With you, she was gentler, perhaps because you were younger, perhaps because you reminded her of herself. Diana noticed. She always noticed. I saw it creating a wound in her that I didn't know how to heal. I thought giving her the CEO position would finally prove to her that she was valued, that she was enough. But I also saw the darkness growing in her, the way she looked at you sometimes when she thought no one was watching. The comments she made about your success being due to luck or charm rather than skill. I confronted her once, asked her directly if she resented you. She denied it, told me I was imagining things. But a father knows, so I've taken these steps to protect you, even though it breaks my heart that I have to. The house is yours because you've made it a home. The shares are yours because you've earned them with your dedication and talent. But most importantly, I want you to know that your worth has never been in question. Diana's struggles are not about you. They're about wounds that have nothing to do with anything you've done. I hope that by the time you read this, I was wrong. I hope Diana proved herself capable of leading with integrity. But if I wasn't wrong, if she's hurt you the way I feared she might, then know this. You have the power to stand up for yourself. You have the legal right and the moral authority. Don't let anyone, not even your sister, make you doubt your value. I love you both, but I trust you, Harriet. I trust you to do the right thing, whatever that may be. Your proud father, Gerald. Tears streamed down my face as I finished reading. Benjamin handed me a box of tissues without a word. When did my father write this? I asked, my voice thick with emotion. The same day he transferred the house. He wanted everything in place before the disease progressed further. Benjamin leaned forward. Harriet, I need to advise you about something. Diana doesn't know about any of this. Not the house transfer, not the shares, not the letter. I've kept these documents sealed per your father's instructions. You can reveal them whenever you choose. Or keep them private. But given what happened today at the company, I think you should know your legal standing before you make any decisions about how to respond. I looked at the deed again. My name printed clearly on the page. Why didn't you tell me sooner? I've been paying her rent for a year since the transfer. Your father's instructions were explicit. I could only reveal the documents if Diana took action against you professionally, or if I had reason to believe she posed a financial threat to you. Today's termination met the first condition. I called you the moment Patricia informed me. I sat back in the chair, my mind reeling. In the span of 3 hours, I'd lost my job and discovered I owned my house. I'd learned my father had Alzheimer's and that had been protecting me from my own sister. I'd found out Diana had been stealing from me for years. What should I do? I asked Benjamin. He smiled slightly. That's not for me to say. But if I may offer some observations? Your father trusted you to know the right time and the right way to use this information. He believed in your judgment. I'd suggest you don't act hastily, but don't wait too long either. Particularly regarding the rent theft. That's a criminal matter if you choose to pursue it. I thanked Benjamin and left his office, my box of belongings in one hand and the deed to my house in the other. As I walked to my car, my phone rang. Diana's name flashed on the screen. I almost didn't answer, but something made me pick up. What? My voice came out harder than I intended. Just calling to remind you that rent is due on Friday, Diana said, her tone dripping with false sweetness. $1,500. Don't be late. I'd hate to have to start eviction proceedings. The audacity took my breath away. Shed just fired me, and now she was demanding rent on a house she didn't own. He'll have to get back to you on that, I said carefully. No getting back to me. Rent is due Friday. You're unemployed now, Harriet. You need to start taking financial obligations seriously. She paused. Maybe you should consider moving somewhere cheaper. I've been thinking about selling that house anyway. Developer offered me a good price for the lot. My blood ran cold. You're planning to sell my house. It's not your house. It's the family house. And as the one actually running the family business, I get to make those decisions. But don't worry, I'll give you 30 days notice. That's more than generous considering your situation. She hung up before I could respond. I stood on the sidewalk, shaking with rage and disbelief. Diana wasn't just stealing from me. She was planning to sell my house out from under me. I got in my car and drove, not really seeing the road, my father's letter echoing in my mind. You have the power to stand up for yourself. It was time to start using that power. 2 weeks passed in a strange fog. I spent my days applying for jobs. my nights lying awake wondering how my relationship with my sister had deteriorated so completely. Diana called 3 more times, demanding rent. Each time I told her I was working on getting the money together. Each time, she grew more impatient and threatening. I needed time to think, to plan, to figure out the right way to handle the nuclear bomb of information Benjamin had given me. On a gray Tuesday morning, I was working in my garden, trying to find some peace in the physical work of weeding and pruning, when I heard a car door slam in my driveway. I looked up to see Diana striding toward my front door like a conquering general. She didn't knock. She never knocked anymore. She simply walked into my living room as if she owned the place, which, in her mind, she did. I followed her inside, dirt still on my hands from the garden. Diana stood in the center of the room, looking around with an appraising eye that made my skin crawl. "This is a nice space," she said conversationally, as if she hadn't barged in uninvited. "High ceilings, original molding, hardwood floors in excellent condition. That developer wasn't wrong. This lot is worth a fortune. Diana, what are you doing here?" She turned to face me, pulling a document from her expensive leather bag. "I'm here because you failed to pay rent for 2 weeks. I've tried to be patient, Harriet. I really have. But my generosity has limits." She held up what looked like an official eviction notice. My heart started pounding as I read the header. It looked legitimate, complete with a court seal and everything. "Am giving you formal notice that you have 72 hours to pay the $4,500 in back rent that you owe. Or I'll have the sheriff remove you from the premises." $4,500, I repeated. "You said $1,500 per month. 2 weeks late would be $750. Maybe a late fee. You're behind 3 months. Actually, I let it slide because you were family, but clearly that was a mistake." Diana's smile was sharp and cold. "The official records will show you haven't paid rent since June. That's a lie. I have bank statements showing I've paid every month. To my personal account, yes. But the trust requires payment to the official trust account. You've been paying the wrong place. That's not my problem. That's yours." The calculated cruelty of it took my breath away. She'd been accepting my payments knowing they didn't count, setting up a paper trail of non-payment to justify evicting me. "This is insane, Diana. You can't just make up debts I don't owe." "I'm not making up anything. I have documentation." She pulled out more papers. "This is the trust agreement showing you're required to pay rent. This is the eviction notice filed with the county court. This is the payment record showing you haven't paid into the trust account. Everything is legal and proper." I stared at the documents. They looked real. Too real. "How did you get court papers without me being notified?" "You were notified. I had the papers sent to your work address. Not my fault you're not there anymore to receive them." Her smile widened. "My boyfriend Craig helped me file everything correctly. As a corporate lawyer, you know. Very thorough, Craig. I'd met him twice at company events. Mid-30s, slicked back hair, expensive suits, and a handshake that felt like squeezing a wet fish. The kind of man who talked loudly about his billable hours and his vacation home in the Hamptons. "Why are you doing this?" I asked, hating how my voice shook. "I'm your sister, and I'm trying to run a business that you nearly destroyed. The Patterson account wasn't the only one we lost, Harriet. 4 more clients left after you were fired. They said they were loyal to you, not to the company. Do you have any idea how that made me look? Like I can't retain clients. Like I'm not capable of leading. That's because you fired me without cause and humiliated me publicly." Of course they left. They knew it was wrong. "No. They left because you poisoned them against me. You spent years building personal relationships instead of professional ones, and when you left, you took them with you. That's sabotage, Harriet. That's betrayal of company interests. I didn't take anyone anywhere. I haven't contacted a single client since you fired me." "Then why did they leave?" Diana's voice rose, genuine anger cracking through her polished facade. "Why did Marcus Patterson specifically tell me the company lost its integrity the day I fired you? Why did 3 other clients say the same thing?" "Maybe because it's true," I said quietly. The words hung in the air between us. Diana's face flushed red, her hands clenching into fists. "You think you're so perfect, don't you? Dad's favorite. The natural people person. Everyone loves Harriet. Well, guess what? Being liked doesn't pay the bills. Results pay the bills. And your results were costing us money. My results brought in 60% of the revenue. Your results made you irreplaceable, which meant I couldn't make any changes without clients threatening to leave. Do you know how that felt? Being CEO of a company where half the clients were more loyal to my little sister than to the actual leadership? I had to fire you to prove I was in charge. The admission hung in the air. Shed fired me not because I'd done anything wrong, but because she needed to prove her power, because she was jealous. So this is about ego, I said. You destroyed my career because you felt threatened. I didn't destroy anything. I freed us both. You'll find another job eventually. Maybe one where you're not living in your sister's shadow. And I'll rebuild the company without everyone comparing me to you constantly. By stealing from me and kicking me out of my home. It's not your home. It never was. This house belongs to the family trust, which I administer. Dad set it up that way before he retired. He knew you'd need guidance managing family assets. He knew you were too emotional to handle financial responsibility. Each lie burned like acid. She believed her own fiction so completely that I could see it in her eyes. Shed convinced herself that she was the responsible one, the capable one, the one who deserved everything. You have 72 hours, Diana said, straightening her suit jacket. Pay the back rent or the sheriff will remove you and your belongings. I already have a buyer lined up. A developer who wants to tear this place down and build condos. They're offering $700,000. The sale goes through next month. You can't sell a house that's in a trust without court approval, I said, grasping at anything I remembered from basic legal knowledge. Craig's handling it. All very legal. The trust gives me full authority to manage and dispose of assets as I see fit for the benefit of the family. Keeping you here rent-free isn't beneficial. Selling for $700,000 is. She moved toward the door, then turned back with an expression that might have been pity on someone with more empathy. You know, Harriet, maybe this is for the best. You've always been Dad's favorite. Everyone always said how sweet you were, how talented, how natural with people. But look where that got you. 32 years old, fired, broke, about to be evicted. Maybe being the favorite isn't actually worth anything in the real world. The words were designed to cut, and they did. But as Diana turned to leave, something shifted in me. I thought about my father's letter. About the house deed with my name on it. About the shares I held secretly. About the 4 years of stolen rent money. Diana, I called out. She paused, looking back with that superior expression I'd seen so many times growing up, whenever she beat me at something. About the house. I said carefully. About ownership and trusts and legal authority. We really do need to talk. We just did. You have 72 hours. Don't make this harder than it needs to be. She walked out, leaving the eviction notice on my coffee table. I picked it up, studying the details. It looked official, because Craig had clearly spent time making it look that way. But Benjamin would know if it was legitimate or not. I pulled out my phone to call him when it rang in my hand. Marcus Patterson's name flashed on the screen. I stared at it for a long moment before answering. Mr. Patterson. Harriet, please. It's Marcus. I've been trying to decide if I should call you for 2 weeks now. I heard what Diana did. The entire business community heard. She made quite a scene at the Chamber of Commerce meeting, talking about how she had to clean house and eliminate dead weight. My stomach twisted. She said that publicly. She did. And it backfired spectacularly. Everyone knows your reputation. Everyone knows you built those client relationships through genuine care and excellent work. When people heard she fired you and trashed your name, well, let's just say Diana's not winning any popularity contests right now. I appreciate you telling me, but I'm not sure why you're calling. 2 reasons. First, I want you to know that my son wasn't actually embezzling. That was a cover story. Craig, your sister's boyfriend, was laundering money through my company. He set up my son to take the fall. My legal team figured it out about a week ago. We're building a case against him now. The room tilted. Craig was laundering money through your company. About $200,000 over 18 months. Very sophisticated scheme. Used fake vendor contracts and inflated invoices. When we started asking questions, he panicked and framed my son. Made it look like the kid was skimming money to support a gambling habit. Marcus' voice hardened. My son doesn't even play poker. But Craig manufactured evidence. Bank accounts, betting records, all of it fake. Took us months to unravel it. Does Diana know? That's the question, isn't it? Either she knows and she's complicit, or she doesn't know and she's negligent. Either way, it reflects poorly on her leadership. Which brings me to my second reason for calling. I want to hire you. I blinked. Sure, it misheard. Hire me. I'm starting a venture capital firm focused on sustainable businesses. I need someone who understands building authentic relationships with founders. Someone who can evaluate not just business plans but the people behind them. You're perfect for it. Salary of $120,000 annually, plus equity in the firm. I'm talking to 3 other potential partners, all of them people who left Bennett Marketing after Diana took over. We all agreed it'd be the ideal first hire. Tears pricked my eyes. Marcus, I don't know what to say. Say yes. Say you'll come talk to me tomorrow about the details. Say you won't let Diana's jealousy destroy your career. He paused. And Harriet? I think you should know that Diana and Craig have been bleeding your family company dry. Multiple people have noticed irregularities. If you wanted to do something about it, I know several people who would back you up. After I hung up with Marcus, I sat on my couch for a long time, Diana's fake eviction notice in one hand and my phone in the other. I thought about my father's letter, about the power he'd given me to stand up for myself. Then I called Benjamin Hart and told him everything. It was time to stop being afraid of my sister. It was time to take back what was mine. The next morning, I met Marcus at a coffee shop in the financial district. He brought with him a thin folder and a warm smile that reminded me why I'd always enjoyed working with his company. We talked for 2 hours about his vision for the venture capital firm, about my role, about the future. By the time we shook hands on the offer, I felt like I could breathe again. But Marcus wasn't done helping me. Before you go, he said, sliding the folder across the table. You need to see this. My forensic accountant pulled these records as part of our investigation into Craig. We found some things that go beyond what he did to my company. I opened the folder. Inside were bank statements, wire transfers, and email printouts. My eyes scanned the pages, my confusion growing. What am I looking at? Evidence that Craig and Diana have been embezzling from Bennett Marketing Group for at least 8 months. See these wire transfers? They're going to an offshore account in the Cayman Islands. The account is registered to a shell corporation called Pinnacle Consulting Services. Craig is the registered agent. Diana is listed as the beneficial owner. My hands started shaking. How much? Approximately $300,000 that we can track. There might be more. The scheme works like this. They create fake consulting contracts with made-up vendors. Bennett Marketing pays the invoices. The money gets routed through 2 intermediary accounts, then ends up offshore. Very sophisticated. If your company wasn't already struggling, no one would have noticed. The company is struggling. Marcus' expression was grim. Harriet, Bennett Marketing is hemorrhaging money. Client losses, yes, but also these fraudulent payments. Deanna's been hiding it by deferring vendor payments and cutting staff salaries under the guise of budget constraints. 3 employees took pay cuts in the last 2 months. Another 2 were moved to part-time status. I thought about the people I'd worked with for 6 years. Good people with families and mortgages. She's destroying the company my father built. Worse, she's planning to blame the bankruptcy on poor previous management. We found emails where she discussed how to frame the financial collapse as your father's fault, make it look like Gerald mismanaged funds during his final years, claim the Alzheimer's affected his judgment earlier than anyone knew. She's going to use your father's diagnosis to cover her own crimes. The betrayal was so massive I couldn't process it all. My sister wasn't just stealing. She was preparing to destroy our father's legacy and reputation. I need to make some calls, I said, my voice sounding distant to my own ears. I spent the rest of the day contacting people I'd worked with at Bennett Marketing. 3 of them agreed to meet me that evening. Jade Morrison, Samuel Carter, and Ruth Davidson. All 3 had been fired in the 2 weeks since my termination. They arrived at my house around 7. each looking shell-shocked and grateful to have been invited. We gathered around my dining room table, and I shared what Marcus had told me about the embezzlement. Their reactions told me everything I needed to know. I knew something was wrong, Jade said. She'd been the accounting manager, a detail-oriented woman in her 40s with 2 kids and a methodical mind. About 3 months ago, I found unexplained wire transfers in our operating account. $50,000 to a vendor ID never heard of. When I asked Diana about it, she said it was a consulting contract, approved by the board. I asked to see the contract. She said she'd send it. She never did. I found more, Samuel added. Head managed our vendor relationships, negotiating contracts and ensuring quality service. 6 different vendors we supposedly paid in the last 6 months. I'd never worked with any of them. Never even heard of them. When I tried to look up their business registrations, 3 of them didn't exist. The other 3 were registered to addresses that turned out to be empty office buildings. Diana fired me when I asked about the vendor contracts, Ruth said quietly. She'd been in operations for 8 years, one of the most loyal employees my father had. She said I was questioning her leadership. She accused me of undermining her authority and spreading rumors. But I wasn't spreading rumors. I was asking legitimate questions about unexplained payments. The picture became clearer. Diana had systematically removed anyone who asked questions about the money. She'd installed people loyal to her or incompetent enough not to notice the discrepancies. She'd isolated herself from oversight. There's more, Samuel said. He pulled out a flash drive. I kept backups of everything. Cloud storage that Diana doesn't know about. Every contract, every invoice, every email about vendor relationships for the last 2 years. If there's fraud in there, we can prove it. Ruth reached into her bag and produced a folder. I made copies of the suspicious contracts before I was fired. Diana told me to shred them. I shred everything, but these felt wrong. So I copied them first. Jade pulled out her phone. I recorded a conversation with Craig 2 months ago. We were at a company event, and Head had too much to drink. He started bragging about how easy it was to manipulate accounting systems, how most companies never audit their vendor payments carefully enough. He said something about creative accounting being an art form. I recorded it because it made me uncomfortable. I thought maybe I was being paranoid. Now I know I wasn't. We spent 3 hours going through everything. The evidence was damning. Fake contracts with inflated prices, wire transfers that didn't match any legitimate business expense, email chains where Diana instructed people to process payments without proper documentation. A trail of breadcrumbs that led straight to fraud. What do we do with this? Ruth asked. If we go to the board, Diana will deny everything. She'll say we're disgruntled former employees making things up. We need someone the board will believe, I said. Someone with authority and no personal stake in the outcome. A forensic accountant, Jade suggested. If we hire one independently and they verify the fraud, the board can't ignore it. Or we go to the police, Samuel said. This is criminal. This is embezzlement. I thought about my father's shares, still secret in Benjamin's office. About the trigger clauses that would give me the power to call a vote of no confidence. About the timing. We do both, I decided. But first, I need to talk to Benjamin Hart, and I need to call an emergency board meeting. As if the universe was listening, my phone rang. Diana's name flashed on the screen. I put it on speaker so everyone could hear. Your 72 hours are up, Harriet. I'm filing the eviction paperwork with the sheriff tomorrow morning. I hope you found somewhere else to stay. Actually, Diana, I've been doing some research about house ownership and trust law. I think you're going to want to see what I found. There was a pause. What are you talking about? I'm talking about the deed to this house. The real deed, not the fake trust documents you and Craig created. I'm talking about ownership. Legal ownership. The kind that's filed with the county and notarized and absolutely legitimate. Another pause, longer this time. You don't know what you're talking about. I'm talking about fraud, Diana. Multiple kinds. The kind that sends people to prison. But we can discuss it tomorrow. I'm calling an emergency board meeting at Bennett Marketing, 10 o'clock. I've already contacted Gregory Walsh and Patricia Summers. They've agreed to hear what I have to say. You can't call a board meeting. You don't work there anymore. No, but I'm still a shareholder. Turns out Dad left me more than you thought. See you tomorrow, Diana. Oh, and bring Craig. He's going to want to hear this too. I hung up before she could respond. My hands were shaking, but this time it wasn't from fear. It was from adrenaline, from purpose, from finally taking action after weeks of being pushed around. Jade, Samuel, and Ruth stared at me with something like awe. "You're a shareholder?" Samuel asked. "Apparently. And tomorrow, we're going to burn Diana's whole fake empire down." We spent another hour coordinating our plan. Samuel would compile all the financial evidence. Ruth would organize the fraudulent contracts. Jade would prepare a summary of the accounting irregularities. I would work with Benjamin to prepare the legal documentation showing my ownership of the house and my secret shares. As everyone prepared to leave, Ruth touched my arm gently. "Your father would be proud of you," she said softly. "He always knew you had steel in you. He told me once that you were the strongest of his children because you chose kindness over cruelty. He said that took more courage than most people realized." After they left, I stood in my living room, my house, looking around at the space Eid made my own over 4 years. The photos on the walls, the plants Eid nurtured, the furniture I'd carefully chosen. Diana thought she could take all of this from me. She thought I'd roll over and accept defeat. She was about to learn how wrong she was. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. When I opened it, I saw a photo that made my blood run cold. It was a listing for my house on a real estate website. The photos showed the interior, taken when I wasn't home. The price, $700,000. The listing agent, Diana Bennett. The description called it a teardown opportunity and a prime development lot. Shed listed my house for sale. While I still lived in it, while she knew I owned it. The audacity was breathtaking, but so was her desperation. She needed that money fast, probably to cover the embezzlement before anyone else noticed. She was scrambling, making mistakes, moving too quickly. Good. Desperate people made errors, and I was going to catch every single one. I forwarded the listing to Benjamin with a simple message. "Add this to the evidence. See you tomorrow." Then I poured myself a glass of wine, sat on my couch, and for the first time in 2 weeks, I smiled. Really smiled. Tomorrow was going to be very interesting. I arrived at Bennett Marketing Group at 9:30 the next morning, dressed in my best navy suit, the one I'd worn to my most important client presentations. Benjamin Hart met me in the lobby, carrying 2 briefcases full of documents. Together we rode the elevator to the 14th floor, and for a moment I was transported back to that horrible morning 2 weeks ago when I'd left in disgrace. Not anymore. Today I was walking back in with the truth. Patricia Summers and Gregory Walsh were already in the conference room, along with 2 other board members, Robert Chen, who'd been my father's best friend, and Margaret Liu, who'd helped the company through 3 recessions with her financial wisdom. They all looked tense and concerned. "Thank you for agreeing to this emergency meeting," I said as Benjamin and I took seats at the table. "I know this is highly irregular." "Harriet, we're glad you called," Patricia said. Her voice was gentle but firm. "Several of us have had concerns about Diana's leadership, but without concrete evidence, we couldn't act." "You said you have evidence. Quite a lot of it, actually." I nodded to Benjamin, who began pulling documents from his briefcases. "But first, I need to clarify my standing to bring this information to you. Some of you may wonder why I'm here at all since Diana terminated my employment." "We've all wondered about that termination," Robert said. His loyalty to my father ran deep, and I could see the pain in his eyes. "Gerald would never have approved. My father couldn't approve because he's suffering from Alzheimer's disease," I said quietly. "He was diagnosed 14 months ago, before he retired. He chose not to make it public, but he took steps to protect the company and me." Benjamin. Benjamin opened the first folder. Gerald Bennett executed several legal documents in the months before his retirement. First, he transferred full ownership of the family home on Maple Street to Harriet alone. The house is hers, free and clear. The transfer was properly filed with the county and is legally binding. Patricia's eyes widened. "Diana said the house was in a family trust." Diana lied. I said flatly, "She's been collecting rent from me for 4 years on a house she doesn't own." "That's fraud." But it's not the most serious crime she's committed. Benjamin pulled out more documents. Gerald also left Harriet 49% of his shares in Bennett Marketing Group, held in a protective trust. These shares come with specific provisions. If Diana attempts to sell the company, engage in fraud, or eliminate evidence of Harriet's contributions to the company, the shares transfer to Harriet with full voting rights and the power to call for a vote of no confidence. The board members stared at the documents Benjamin spread across the table. Margaret picked up the share certificates, examining them carefully. These are legitimate, she confirmed, properly notarized and filed with the corporate records. How did we not know about them? Gerald filed them through a separate legal channel. It was his right as majority shareholder at the time. Benjamin's voice was calm but authoritative. The provisions have been triggered. Diana has engaged in fraud. Harriet now holds these shares with full voting rights. What fraud? Gregory asked. Though his tone suggested he already suspected the answer, I nodded to Benjamin, who pulled out Samuel's flash drive. May I use the screen? For the next hour, we walked through everything: the fake vendor contracts, the wire transfers to offshore accounts, the shell corporation in the Cayman Islands, the systematic firing of anyone who asked questions, Jade's recording of Craig bragging about creative accounting, Ruth's copied contracts, Samuel's comprehensive backup of every suspicious transaction. The board members' expressions moved from skepticism to shock to fury as the evidence mounted. Margaret's hands actually shook as she reviewed the financial statements, showing $300,000 in fraudulent payments. This is embezzlement, she said. This is systematic theft from the company. How long has this been going on? At least 8 months, I answered. Possibly longer. We're still tracing all the payments. And Diana knows about all of this, Robert asked. She orchestrated it. The Shell Corporation lists her as the beneficial owner. The offshore account required her signature to open. She's not just aware of the fraud, she's directing it. Patricia looked like she might cry. Gerald trusted her with his life's work. He also made provisions in case his trust was misplaced, Benjamin said. He knew his daughter was struggling with jealousy and ambition. He hoped leadership would help her find her better nature, but he prepared for the possibility that it wouldn't. The conference room door burst open. Diana stood there, Craig beside her, both of them looking confident and annoyed. What is this? Diana demanded. I received a text saying there was an emergency board meeting. I'm the CEO. I should have been informed. You weren't informed because this meeting is about you, Patricia said, her voice cold. Sit down, Diana. You too, Craig. They sat, Diana's eyes scanning the documents spread across the table. I watched as she recognized the bank statements, the contracts, the evidence of her crimes. Her face went pale. Where did you get those? She whispered. From people who actually cared about this company. I said. People you fired because they asked questions. People who kept records because something felt wrong. This is ridiculous, Craig interjected, his voice smooth and practiced. Those documents are confidential company records. Whoever took them committed theft. The people who took them were employees, doing their due diligence, Benjamin replied. And the documents show systematic fraud, which nullifies any confidentiality agreements. Would you like to explain these wire transfers, Mr. Craig? The ones going to an offshore account you control. Craig's confidence faltered. I don't know what you're talking about. Really. I pulled out my phone and played Jade's recording. Craig's drunken voice filled the room, bragging about manipulating accounting systems, about creative accounting being an art form. That was taken out of context. Craig stammered. I was joking at a party. Were you joking when you laundered $200,000 through Marcus Patterson's company? I asked. Were you joking when you framed his son for embezzlement to cover your tracks? Because Marcus' legal team has been building a case against you for 6 months. They have evidence. Real evidence. The kind that puts people in federal prison. Craig's face drained of color. Diana looked at him with dawning horror. You said the Patterson account was legitimate, she said to Craig. You said their problems had nothing to do with us. I was protecting you, Craig insisted. I was handling it. By framing an innocent kid. Samuel's voice came from the doorway. I turned to see him standing there with Jade and Ruth, along with two men in dark suits. By laundering money and destroying people's lives. The two men in suits stepped forward. Craig Morrison, one of them said, pulling out a badge. I'm Special Agent Williams with the FBI. You're under arrest for money laundering, wire fraud, and embezzlement. You have the right to remain silent. The room erupted in chaos. Craig started yelling about lawyers. Diana stood frozen, her face a mask of shock. The board members talked over each other. Benjamin calmly continued laying out documents. As the FBI agents handcuffed Craig and read him his Miranda rights, Agent Williams turned to Diana. Miss Bennett, you're not under arrest at this time, but we'll need you to come down to the federal building for questioning. We have evidence suggesting you were aware of and participated in the fraudulent activities. Diana finally found her voice. I didn't know. I swear I didn't know about the money laundering. Craig handled all the vendor contracts. He said everything was legitimate. Then you were either complicit or negligent, Margaret said, her voice hard as steel. Either way, you're unfit to lead this company. You can't fire me. I'm the majority shareholder. Actually, Benjamin said, pulling out one final document. Harriet now holds 49%. You hold 51%, but under the company bylaws, the board can remove a CEO for cause, with a simple majority vote. Embezzlement, even if you claim ignorance, certainly qualifies as cause. Patricia stood. I moved to terminate Diana Bennett as CEO effective immediately. I second, Robert said. All in favor? Margaret asked. 4 hands went up. Only Diana's remained down. The motion passes. Diana, you're fired. Security will escort you from the building. You have 1 hour to clear out your office. Diana looked at me, her eyes filled with something I couldn't quite identify. Rage? Betrayal? Fear? You did this, she said. You planned all of this. You were always planning to take the company from me. No, I said quietly. You did this to yourself. I just stopped letting you get away with it. As security led Diana away, following the FBI agents who were taking Craig, the conference room fell silent. Patricia finally spoke. Harriet, we owe you an apology. We should have looked into your termination more carefully. We should have questioned Diana's decisions. You didn't have any reason to doubt her, I said. She was good at hiding what she was doing. What happens now? Gregory asked. The company is in crisis. We've lost clients, we're hemorrhaging money, and our CEO just got arrested. Actually, I said I may have a solution for at least part of that. I told them about Marcus' job offer, about his venture capital firm, about the network of former Bennett marketing clients who'd left because of Diana but might come back under new leadership. I'm not asking to be CEO, I said. But I'd like to come back as VP of Client Relations. And I'd like to bring back the people Diana fired unfairly. Jade, Samuel, Ruth, the institutional knowledge we lost when Diana cleared house. What about CEO? Robert asked. We need leadership. I recommend a co-leadership model, I said. Samuel has the operations expertise we need. I have the client relationships. Together we can rebuild. Margaret looked at Samuel. Would you accept that role? Samuel, who'd been standing quietly in the doorway, stepped forward. I would, but only if we implement strict financial oversight. No more rubber-stamping vendor contracts. No more payments without documentation. Real accountability. Agreed, Patricia said. She looked at me. And the house? What are you going to do about Diana's fraud? I thought about my father's letter, about his hope that Diana would prove herself capable, about the wounds that had driven her to such desperate acts. I want my $96,000 back, I said. The rent she stole from me. And I want her to stop trying to sell my house, but I don't want to press criminal charges for the housing fraud. That's between sisters. The embezzlement from the company is your decision, but the personal stuff, I'll handle privately. Benjamin looked at me with something like respect. That's very generous. It's strategic. I corrected. Diana needs therapy, not prison. She needs help, not revenge. And I need to move forward with my life, not spend years in court battles with my sister. As the board members discussed next steps, and Samuel began outlining his vision for restructuring operations. I stepped out of the conference room and into the hallway. Through the glass walls, I could see into Diana's office. She was packing her things, tears streaming down her face, security guards watching her every move. For a moment, I felt a surge of pity. She'd destroyed everything our father built, betrayed everyone who trusted her. And now she faced criminal charges and public disgrace, all because she couldn't accept that success wasn't a competition between sisters. But then I thought about the weeks of fear, the humiliation of being fired, the cruelty of her trying to evict me from my own home. I thought about the employees she'd hurt, the clients she'd alienated, the company she'd nearly destroyed. Pity didn't mean forgiveness came easy. It just meant I understood that hurt people, and the cycle had to stop somewhere. I went back into the conference room, where my future was being rebuilt, one decision at a time. 2 months later, I stood in the same conference room where I'd exposed Diana's fraud. But this time, the atmosphere was completely different. The walls displayed charts showing steadily climbing revenue. The table was covered with signed contracts from returning clients. The faces around the room were smiling. Samuel and I had spent 8 weeks rebuilding Bennett Marketing Group from the inside out. We'd implemented new financial controls that required 3 levels of approval for any payment over $5,000. We'd brought back Jade as Chief Financial Officer, Ruth as Director of Operations, and 3 other talented people Diana had fired. We'd personally called every client who'd left, explaining what had happened and inviting them to give us another chance. The results exceeded our hopes. Marcus Patterson not only came back but brought 2 new clients with him. 3 of the 4 other clients who'd left after my firing returned within a month. We'd signed 2 entirely new accounts, both of them referrals from satisfied customers who appreciated our honesty about the company's recent troubles. The company wasn't just surviving, it was thriving. Revenue was up 40% from Diana's final months. Staff morale was the highest it had been in years. People actually smiled in the hallways again. "Harriet, this is incredible," Patricia said, reviewing the quarterly report. "You and Samuel have accomplished in 2 months what I wasn't sure could be done in a year." "We had help," I said, looking at the team We'd assembled. "And we had motivation. This company means something. It's not just about profit margins. It's about the relationships we build and the integrity we bring to our work. Your father would be so proud," Robert added, his voice thick with emotion. "This is exactly the vision he had when he started the company 32 years ago." After the meeting, I drove to Riverside Care Facility, where my father now lived full-time. His Alzheimer's had progressed significantly in the past year. Some days he didn't recognize me. Other days he'd have moments of perfect clarity, windows into the man he used to be. I found him in the sunroom, looking out at the garden. He turned when I entered, and his face broke into a smile that made my heart ache. "Harriet," he said, "my girl, come sit with me. This was a good day." I sat beside him, taking his weathered hand in mine. "I have good news, Dad. The company is doing well. Really well. We got the Patterson account back, and 3 others too. Samuel and I are running things together now, just like you always said we should work as a team." "Diana?" he asked, his eyes clouding with confusion and concern. "Diana's not with the company anymore. She made some mistakes, Dad. Some serious ones. But she's getting help now." It was true. As part of her plea deal with federal prosecutors, Diana had agreed to 3 years of probation, full restitution of all stolen funds, 500 hours of community service, and mandatory therapy. The criminal charges had been reduced from felony embezzlement to misdemeanor fraud because of her cooperation, and Craig's testimony that had pressured her into the scheme. Craig, on the other hand, was facing 5 to 10 years in federal prison for money laundering. Diana was required to pay back all the money she'd stolen, including the $96,000 in fake rent from me. She'd set up a payment plan, $10,000 per month until the debt was cleared. The first check had arrived last week with a note in Diana's handwriting that simply said, "The first of many. I'll make this right." "I'm sorry," my father said, tears welling in his eyes. "I should have seen it. Should have helped her sooner." "You did help her, Dad. You gave her every opportunity. You loved her." Sometimes people have to hit bottom before they can heal. That's not your fault. We sat quietly for a while, watching birds flit through the garden. My father's care facility had beautiful grounds, and Id made sure to plant some of his favorite flowers near his window, purple irises and yellow daylilies. "The house," he said suddenly. "My house. You kept it safe. I kept it safe. It's beautiful, Dad. The garden you planted is thriving. I've been taking care of it just like you taught me." He squeezed my hand, and for a moment his eyes were completely clear, completely present. "You're strong, Harriet. Stronger than you know. I always knew that about you. Your mother knew it too." The mention of my mother, gone now for 8 years, brought tears to my eyes. I wish she could see how things turned out. "She can," he said with certainty. "And she's proud. We both are." He drifted off after that, his hand loosening in mine as he fell into a light sleep. I stayed for another hour, just sitting with him, grateful for the moments of clarity, even as I grieved the man I was slowly losing to the disease. That evening, I met Jade, Samuel, and Ruth at my favorite restaurant, a small Italian place downtown. Wed made it a tradition to have dinner together once a week, a way to process the intensity of rebuilding the company and to maintain the friendships that had gotten us through the crisis. "I got an interesting call today," Jade said over appetizers. "Diana's therapist wants to know if Wed'd be willing to participate in some family therapy sessions. Apparently Diana's been working on accountability and making amends." "What did you say?" Ruth asked. "I said I'd think about it. I'm angry at Diana for what she did, but I also feel sorry for her. She's clearly been struggling with mental health issues for a long time. Borderline personality disorder," I said. "That's what her therapist diagnosed. She sent me a letter explaining it, asking for patience while she learns to manage the condition." "Are you going to do it?" Samuel asked. "The family therapy?" "I don't know," I admitted. "Part of me wants to. She's still my sister, but another part of me isn't ready to sit in a room with her and rehash everything that happened. It's only been 2 months. I'm still processing it all." "You don't owe her forgiveness on her timeline," Ruth said firmly. "She hurt you badly. She hurt all of us. If you need more time, take it. I will. But I also don't want to hold on to anger forever. That just poisons me. Not her." We talked late into the evening about healing and justice, about the difference between accountability and revenge, about how to move forward without forgetting what happened. These were the conversations that helped me make sense of everything, that reminded me I wasn't alone in navigating the complicated emotions of betrayal and recovery. A few days later, I received a package in the mail, no return address, but I recognized Diana's handwriting on the label. Inside was a photo album I'd never seen before, filled with pictures of our childhood. Diana and me at various ages, playing in the yard, celebrating birthdays, helping our father at the office during summer breaks. On the inside cover, Diana had written a note. "I found these in Mom's things that I'd stored in the garage. I wanted you to have them. I've been looking at these photos in therapy, trying to understand when things went wrong between us. I think maybe they were always complicated, but there were also times when we were just sisters who loved each other. I don't know if we can ever get back to that, but I wanted you to know I remember it existed. I'm sorry for everything I did. Not sorry that I got caught, but sorry that I did it at all. Sorry that I let jealousy and mental illness turn me into someone who could hurt you so badly. You deserved better. You always deserved better. Diana." I spent a long time looking through those photos. Us at ages 5 and 8, covered in finger paint. Us at 10 and 13, dressed up for a father-daughter dance at the company. Us at 15 and 18, celebrating my high school graduation. In every photo, Diana had her arm around me, protective and proud. Somewhere along the way, that protective big sister had become a jealous rival. Mental illness played a role, certainly. So did our mother's impossible standards and comparisons. So did the pressure of living up to our father's legacy. But the pain was real either way, and healing would take more than a photo album and an apology. Still, it was a start. That weekend, I finally tackled a project I'd been avoiding: redecorating my house. For 4 years, I'd lived here thinking it was temporary, that I was just renting, that it wasn't really mine to change. Now that I knew the truth, I wanted to make it fully my own. I painted the living room a warm sage green. I hung new curtains in the bedroom, bright patterns that made me smile. I bought a new couch, one I'd picked out myself instead of inheriting from family. I framed my father's letter and hung it in my home office, a reminder of his faith in me. As I worked, I thought about ownership, real ownership, not just of property, but of one's own life. For years, I'd lived in a kind of limbo, always deferring to Diana, always trying not to rock the boat, always putting others' comfort ahead of my own needs. The house had been a metaphor for my life, living in a space I thought belonged to someone else, paying for the privilege, never quite feeling entitled to make it my own. But the house had always been mine. My father had given it to me because he trusted me to care for it, to make it a home. The same was true for my life. No one could give me permission to own my story, my boundaries, my worth. I had to claim those things myself. One evening, as I was planting new flowers in the front garden, a car pulled up to the curb. Diana got out, moving slowly, hesitantly. She looked different, thinner, older, worn down by the weight of consequences, but also somehow softer, more real. "I know I'm not supposed to be here," she said, staying on the sidewalk. "I know you don't want to see me, but I had to bring you something." She held out an envelope. I stood, brushing dirt from my knees, and walked to the edge of my property. I didn't invite her closer, but I took the envelope. "It's the title to my car," she said. "The BMW. It's paid off, worth about $40,000. I want you to sell it and put the money toward what I owe you. It'll speed up the payment plan, get you closer to being whole again." I opened the envelope and saw the title, properly signed over to me. "Diana, you need a car. I bought a used Honda. It's practical and reliable, which is what I need right now. Not a status symbol I can't afford." She looked at the house behind me, at the garden I was planting. "It looks beautiful." "The house. You're taking good care of it. It's my house," I said, not unkindly but firmly. "I was always taking care of it." "I know. I'm sorry I tried to take it from you. I'm sorry I tried to take everything from you." Her voice broke. "I've been so angry for so long, Harriet. Angry at you for being likable. Angry at Mom for comparing us. Angry at Dad for seeing through me. Angry at myself for never being enough. And I turned that anger into cruelty, into crimes, into destroying everything I touched. You're in therapy," I said. It wasn't a question. 3 times a week, and medication, and group counseling. And I'm working at a nonprofit helping small businesses with financial literacy. It's humbling work, making minimum wage after being a CEO, but it's honest work. And it's teaching me that my worth isn't tied to my salary or my title. We stood in awkward silence for a moment. I thought about inviting her in, about offering coffee and conversation, but I wasn't ready. The wound was still too fresh, the betrayal too deep. "Thank you for the car title," I finally said. "I'll sell it and put the money toward the debt." "There's something else," Diana said. "I talked to Dad yesterday. At the care facility, he had a clear moment. He told me about the shares you have, about the protective trust. He said he gave them to you because he knew you'd use them wisely, that you'd protect his legacy. He was right. You saved the company. You saved his life's work. And I almost destroyed it. You did destroy parts of it, but we're rebuilding. That's what matters now." "Can I ask you something?" Diana's eyes were red, whether from tears or exhaustion I couldn't tell. "Why didn't you press charges? For the house fraud, for stealing rent from you. You could have. I deserved it." I thought about my answer carefully, because sending you to prison wouldn't heal anything. It wouldn't fix what's broken between us. And it wouldn't give me back the years of rent you stole. But watching you take responsibility, watching you get help, watching you actually change, that might heal something. Not for you, for me. Knowing that I chose rehabilitation over revenge, that I broke the cycle of hurt even when I had every right to perpetuate it. I don't deserve your mercy. Maybe not. But I deserve my peace. And staying angry, keeping you in prison, Obsessing over punishment. That would have stolen my peace. So this isn't about what you deserve. It's about what I need to move forward, Diana nodded, wiping her eyes. I should go. I just wanted you to know I'm trying. I'm really trying to be better. I hope you succeed, I said. And I meant it. I watched her drive away in her modest Honda, the BMW title still in my hand. Then I went back to planting flowers, making my house, my home, a reflection of the life I was choosing to build. 6 months after the confrontation that changed everything, I stood in my living room, the same room where Diana had once waved that fake eviction notice in my face, and marveled at how different everything looked. The sage-green walls glowed in the afternoon sunlight streaming through the windows. New furniture that I'd chosen filled the space. Photos of friends and colleagues lined the shelves. My father's framed letter hung prominently above my desk. This was my space, my home, my life. The company was thriving beyond anyone's expectations. Bennett Marketing Group had just signed its biggest contract in company history, a 3-year deal worth $500,000 with a national sustainability brand. Samuel and I had been featured in a business magazine article about successful company turnarounds. The staff we'd rehired and the new people we'd brought on had created a culture of transparency and collaboration that made coming to work actually enjoyable. Marcus Patterson had become not just a client but a mentor and friend. His venture capital firm had invested $200,000 in Bennett Marketing, giving us the capital we needed to expand into digital marketing services. Had also introduced me to a network of business leaders who valued integrity and relationship building, opening doors I'd never imagined possible. But the real victory wasn't in the contracts or the revenue numbers. It was in the peace I felt when I came home each day. The confidence I'd gained from standing up for myself, the knowledge that I'd faced betrayal and injustice and chosen healing over bitterness. I'd sold Diana's BMW for $38,000 and put the money toward her debt. She was still making monthly payments, now down to owing me $48,000 of the original $96,000. Her therapist had reached out again about family counseling, and this time I'd agreed. We'd had 3 sessions so far, awkward and painful, but also necessary. Diana was learning to take responsibility for her actions without drowning in shame. I was learning that forgiveness didn't mean forgetting, it meant freeing yourself from the prison of perpetual anger. We weren't close. We might never be close again, but we were learning to be in the same room without one of us needing to destroy the other. That felt like progress. My father's Alzheimer's continued to progress. His clear moments became rarer, more precious when they occurred. Last week, during a visit, Head looked at me with sudden recognition and said, "You kept the house safe. You kept everything safe." Then Head drifted away again, back into the fog. But those moments of connection sustained me, reminded me why I'd fought so hard to protect his legacy. I'd started dating again, something I'd neglected for years while pouring all my energy into work. Nothing serious yet, just coffee dates and dinner conversations, the slow process of letting someone new into my carefully rebuilt life. But it felt good to be open to possibility again, to imagine a future that included not just professional success but personal happiness too. The garden my father had planted flourished under my care. I'd added new sections, mixing his favorites with plants I'd chosen myself. Purple irises and yellow daylilies alongside coral roses and white jasmine. A blend of his legacy and my own additions, which felt like the perfect metaphor for how I'd learned to honor the past while creating my own future. On this particular afternoon, I was expecting visitors. Jade, Samuel, Ruth, and Marcus were coming over for what had become a monthly tradition. Dinner at my house, good wine, and conversation that ranged from business strategy to life philosophy to terrible jokes that made us laugh until we cried. As I set the table, I thought about the journey that had brought me here. 6 months ago, I'd stood in this room feeling powerless and betrayed, my sister demanding rent on a house I owned, threatening to evict me from my own life. I'd felt small and defeated, crushed by injustice. But I'd learned something crucial in the months since. True ownership isn't about property or possessions. It's about owning your truth, your boundaries, your worth. Diana tried to take my home, my job, my dignity. But she couldn't take what mattered most, my integrity, and my refusal to become bitter. I'd learned that sometimes the people who hurt us most are fighting battles we can't see. Diana's jealousy and cruelty came from untreated mental illness, from childhood wounds, from a mother's impossible standards, and a desperate need to prove her worth through external validation. Understanding that didn't excuse her behavior, but it helped me see her as a complex, struggling human being rather than a villain in my story. Id learned that there's a difference between justice and revenge. Justice meant holding Diana accountable, protecting others from her harmful behavior, and requiring restitution. Revenge would have meant destroying her completely, pressing every possible charge, making her suffer as much as Shed made me suffer. I chose justice because it healed. Revenge would only have prolonged the pain. Most importantly, Id learned that no one can give you your worth. You have to claim it yourself. For too long, Id waited for permission to take up space, to make decisions, to trust my own judgment. Id deferred to Diana, to the board, to anyone with a title or authority. But the house was always mine. The shares were always mine. The right to stand up for myself was always mine. I just had to decide to use those things. The doorbell rang, pulling me from my thoughts. I opened it to find my chosen family. Jade carrying a bottle of wine, Samuel with fresh bread from his favorite bakery, Ruth holding a bouquet of sunflowers, and Marcus with a box of pastries from the downtown cafe. "Welcome," I said, ushering them inside. "Come in, make yourselves at home." "It always amazes me how different this place feels now," Jade said, looking around. "The energy is completely changed." "That's because it's actually mine now," I replied. "Not in a legal sense, it always was legally, but in here." I touched my chest. I finally believe it. I finally feel like I belong in my own life. We gathered around the dining table, filling plates and glasses, the conversation flowing easily. At some point, Ruth raised her glass. "A toast," she said. "To Harriet, who taught us all that strength doesn't mean never falling down. It means getting back up and building something better from the pieces." "To Harriet," the others echoed, and I felt tears prick my eyes. "To all of us," I corrected. "You stood with me when you didn't have to. You kept records and asked questions, and refused to accept injustice. You built this comeback as much as I did." "To all of us, then," Marcus agreed. "To integrity, to resilience, and to the kind of success that doesn't require crushing others to achieve it." We clinked glasses, and I looked around at these faces, these people who'd become family in the truest sense. Not because we shared blood, but because we'd chosen each other, supported each other, believed in each other when belief was hard. Later, after everyone had gone home and I was cleaning up, I walked through my house, turning off lights. I paused in each room, remembering the fear I'd felt 6 months ago, the certainty that I was going to lose everything. But I hadn't lost everything. I'd lost some things, yes. The sister I thought I had, the job I'd loved, the illusion that family loyalty was unconditional. But I'd gained so much more. Self-respect, true friends, the knowledge that I could face injustice and come out stronger. A company I'd saved and rebuilt. A home that was truly mine, inside and out. In the end, that was the real lesson. The house was always mine, but I had to fight to claim it. The same is true for our lives. No one can give you your worth. You have to own it yourself. And when someone tries to take what's yours, whether it's property or dignity or peace, you have the right to stand up and say, "This is mine. You can't have it." I'd said those words to Diana in this very room 6 months ago. I'd said them again when I exposed her fraud to the board. I'd said them in every decision I'd made to choose healing over hatred, accountability over revenge, strength over victimhood, and I'd keep saying them, in big ways and small, for the rest of my life. Because that's what ownership really means. Not just holding the deed to a house, but holding the truth of who you are, and refusing to let anyone take that from you. I turned off the last light and headed upstairs to bed, grateful for the journey, grateful for the lessons, grateful for the life I'd built from the ruins of betrayal. The house was mine. My career was mine. My future was mine. And I was never giving any of it away again. Before I end, I want to ask you something. Have you ever had to stand up to someone you loved who was hurting you? How did you find the strength to set boundaries while still choosing compassion over cruelty? Share your stories in the comments below. Your experience might be exactly what someone else needs to hear today. If this story resonated with you, please hit that like button and subscribe to hear more stories about finding strength in difficult times. Share this with someone who needs to hear that they have the power to reclaim their life, no matter how powerless they might feel right now. Thank you for listening to my story. I hope it reminds you that you're stronger than you know, braver than you believe, and worthy of standing up for yourself. May you always have the courage to own your truth and the wisdom to know that your worth isn't something anyone else gets to decide. Until next time, take care of yourselves and each other.